So for today's video, I wanted to talk to you about how I found out I had two vaginas. And it all started with a duck. And this is kind of a different story. This is definitely adult subject matter, so I will leave it at that. But this is also kind of an invitation because I know that a lot of people have questions about it and how does that work and does it work and all these kind of different questions, and I would love it if you actually tweeted me your questions and I will address those in a different video. If I were to address everything at once, it would definitely be a very lengthy video. So I wanted to tell you about how I found out, because that in itself is a good 25 minutes, right? That in itself is a good long segment, and then I would love to actually hear from you. What are your questions when it comes to having two vaginas? About periods, we've done a video on period cramps, and yes, mine are killer. Yes, I get two periods. About how that works, about having children in the future, about how it logistically works to have two vaginas and two cervixes. Am I going to need two pap smears and two uteruses kind of glued together? But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and really just kind of tell you about how I found out. So if you have specific questions, be bold, go ahead. You can ask me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Just tweet me at sincerelycass11 or at diamondsandheels14 because I would love to kind of get those questions, or leave them in the comments here. That's really easy too. Leave them in the comments here and tell me what your questions are, because I would like to answer them. If you see someone else who asked your question, or if you really like that question and you want to answer too, give it a thumbs up so that way I know which ones to address in the next video. But how I found out I had two vaginas, it was with my grandma with a duck. Well, it wasn't with my grandma, but that's kind of how it started. So basically all my life I've had very bad period cramps. I've been very moody. I believe that there's other things involved, such as depression and bipolar and ADHD, because it runs in the family. All of my uncles had it, all of my cousins had it, my brother, like everybody has like things. So I kind of always blamed it on that, but there is definitely some mood swings involved, and definitely some hormonal fluctuations, because acne, like it all kind of, my body, it's all interlinked, and they're, things affect each other. But I did get my period at a very young age. I got it like on Christmas Day, freaking A, like thanks a lot, life. I think I got acne in the 3rd grade. I think I got it maybe 5th or 6th, which I know isn't as early as some, but for me and for people around me, it's like, whoa, that was early. But we didn't know that I even had an issue or one kidney until probably 2 years ago. And what happened is that, I just always had really bad irregular periods. There were times that I would not have a period for 6 months, or times that I would have literally 3 periods a month. And it's not like, it's not like there was sexual reasons that would have stopped my period or increased them for that kind of thing. That was just my body and how it was working. But that being said, there was one day that I was at my grandma's house and she was like, "Oh, Cassie, take me to the store." And I was like, "Okay, Oma, let's go to Costco." So we're walking out the back door and I was like, "Oma, look, there's a duck. It doesn't look too healthy." It was kind of sitting by her pool. She's like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, "Oma, should we help the duck?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I want to go to Costco. I want to get some ice cream and some sauerkraut because I'm German and Russian and Polish and Egyptian and all sorts of things that she is." And I was like, "Okay, Oma, let's go." Ukrainian primarily. But that being said, we go to Costco, we come back, and literally we're taking the ice cream in so it doesn't melt, and I look over and that duck does not look good. Like, it was not looking good before. It was just kind of like, Now it's literally laying there with its neck out. It's got ants crawling all over it. I dropped the ice cream. It's already half melted, so of course it goes everywhere. And I'm like, "Oma, this duck." And she's like, "Oh no, help me take the ice cream in first." I was like, "No, Oma, look at this duck." So I'm like, "Oma, get out of here." We didn't even have time to empty the truck. We didn't even have time to empty the trunk of the car. I basically take this duck, I wrap it up in my juicy sweater, I shove it in a box, and I say, "Dear Lord, please let this duck live." And I'm speeding it over to like the wildlife museum, and I bring it in and I say, "Will you please take this duck? I don't know what's wrong." And I bring it in and I, do a little prayer, and then I leave. And that was, hush your muffins, that was life, right? And, I called a little while later and they said the duck hadn't made it. It looked like it had gotten into poison from a park nearby. Apparently a lot of ducks were getting poisoned. Kind of killed me on the inside. Had a little funeral for it. But about to... No! Hush your face. I don't have time for this right now. I would think about a week later, all of a sudden I was telling my mom, "Ouch, I have some pain kind of down here in my lower back." And she's like, oh, that's weird. That's where your kidneys are. And I was like, yeah, like it really hurts. It's kind of sore. And it was on both sides. So she's like, well, you know what? Kidneys are important. Like, let's take you to your physician. So go to the doctor, and she kind of pokes me and prods me, and she's asking me, hey, like, do you have a bladder infection? Like, have you been, or kidney stones? Have you been pissing rocks? I'm like, no. Has it been painful? What color? Like, what's going on? And trying to figure things out, and even asking me things about my thyroid and like other problems and stuff. And for the life of her, she is an excellent physician, mind you. She has diagnosed things left and right that multiple other doctors have failed to recognize. So love her to death. She is literally amazing. Been doing this for like 50 plus years, whatever. It shows, okay? And not only that, but she gives you balloons sometimes. Just saying. And basically we couldn't figure this out, and she was just kind of going through the list, and she was like, well, I'll get you a blood test. I was like, no, needles. She'll like, I'll give you a blood test. We're going to do some diagnostics. She said, by the way, you haven't been like hunting or messing around with wild fowl. I was like, fowl? Does a duck count? She looks at me and she said, you hunted a duck? And I was like, no, I didn't hunt a duck. I saved the life of a duck. Would that have something to do with it? And she goes, and I see her peering over her spectacles, and she kind of writes something down. She's like, we are going to get you a MRI. We are going to get you a, blood test. We are going to get you a ultrasound, and I'm going to take a look at your kidneys. And I was like, okay, like, whatever. So I think, okay, I'll do that in a couple of days. No, she says, you go in right now. I was like, okay, like, whatever. So I go to this ultrasound table, and I'm laying there. I'm like, okay, lady, like, when are we gonna go? She puts the gel on. It is cold. She didn't heat it or whatever, and I'm used to it. And I'm kind of used to it. It was funny because I was texting her friends, and they're like, wait, are you pregnant? Why are you getting an ultrasound? But you get ultrasounds for other things too, because it's a way to see into the body by using a sound wave. But so she starts taking a look at my kidney and everything. She's like, ooh, you've got one big healthy kidney. Look at that. I don't see any kidney stones. I don't see any whatever problems, whatever. So she flips me to the other side to look for it, and she just keeps on poking and prodding. I'm like, lady, would you get your fingers off me and hurry up? I got things to do. I got a life to live. I got some Skittles to munch on, right? So she's doing this, and she's like, let me flip you over to the other side. I'm like, okay, whatever. And she's flipping me over to the other side. She's like, yep, we got a kidney there. And I'm like, okay, like, what are you doing, lady? So she flips me over the other side. She's looking. She's like, well, there's your liver. There's everything else. I don't see a kidney. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, you lost my kidney? Ho? You lost my kidney? Right? So she looks at me, she says, honey, I've been doing this for about 15 years, and I don't think you have a kidney. And I said, haha, that's a good joke. Put on your spectacles, get your eyes checked, renew your medical license, okay, bye. So she's basically telling me I don't have a kidney. And at this point, I'm like, WTF ever, right? So we march back to the doctor later that day, showing her the tests, and she looks at me and she's like, and she looks really interested. And I'm like, what the heck? And she says, honey, we don't know if you have 2 kidneys. And I was like, oh, great, now you're going to tell me that I don't? So she says, we're going to get you an MRI, we're going to get you some blood tests, whatever, to find out if you have a kidney. And I said, okay. And she says, we're going to test for a couple of other things too. And I didn't think much of it. I was like, oh, okay, we're going to test for a couple of other things, see if I have wild duck disease up in my liver, kidney, whatever, right? So we're gonna do these tests. So I go into the MRI, they start doing this scan, you know, you lay in the box, it's metal, you don't wear earrings, you know, whatever. Go back to the doctor a couple of days later, and she takes a look at everything. She goes, aha! And I was like, what is it? She's like, you do have one kidney. My jaw like drops. I'm like, WTF is this? She's like, you have a duplex or partial duplex on one side, you have no kidney on the other side, and as I suspected, you have 2 vaginas. And I look at her, I'm like, what? Like, you just pulled this out of your butt. Where did this come from? WTF. So first off, I'm freaking out that I'm missing a kidney on one side. Second off, I'm freaking out that I have a double kidney or a half of a kidney glued to my regular kidney that's enlarged on this side. What the heck? So I tell all of my friends, sorry, if you're drinking, I only can be the driver. If you drink too much and kill your kidneys, I cannot donate one. So be responsible. But that being said, it's also a great excuse to not drink. As you guys know, I have some issues with alcohol just because of family issues and just because of relationship and abusive issues, and it is very personal to me. I'm okay with being around other people who are drinking. I'm just not really good with drunk people, and I do have a very short temper when it comes to alcohol, but it's a great excuse because I don't drink and I don't plan to. That's just a personal preference of mine, but having one kidney is a great excuse because I could be like, oh, like I could potentially die. I can't have that. Do you really want to be the one that kills me? So anyways, So I'm kind of freaking out here. My jaw drops to the floor. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? We're looking at these scans, I'm missing a kidney. And so that right there deducted that it wasn't a kidney problem from the wild duck. I didn't have wild duck disease because, you know, it wasn't on both sides where my pain was. And we figured out it was probably like a muscle spasm or something like that, or a muscle soreness or whatever, but not actually a kidney problem. So when I find out that I have one kidney, I am freaking out. And I have 2 vaginas? Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, how? What do you mean? Aha, that's what I suspected. And she says, well, sometimes, very rarely, when people have one kidney, for some reason, they generally have 2 uteruses glued together or like a heart shape or separated or whatever. And they usually have a dual reproductive system. And I was like, oh, lovely. So that is pretty much how we found out. Oh, and I did have to take blood work, and literally I almost bit the nurse. I almost fainted. My hands get really sweaty. I cannot handle. At least we know that I will never be an intravenous drug user. But that being said, freaking out, kind of, I have 2 vaginas, WTF. I did a video a long time ago when I first found out called my medical mystery video. But that's kind of how I found out, and then I realized, holy crap. This explains my 21-day periods. This explains my unruly mood swings. This explains everything in life, right? And when it comes to having kids, I am probably going to have multiples because there are 2. They could be twins. They could be separate because there are 2 different birthing chambers. I may need a C-section if they both try to enter the birthing chamber at the same time if I'm having kids. If they don't, then that's not an issue. What else can I address? Do I have 2 periods? Yes. What it is that the hormones trip into one period and it goes and then kind of sets off the other period. It's kind of like a delayed reaction. The second one goes. Not having a period for many months, that's probably anemia, lack of iron, lack of whatever that's causing that as opposed to this. Hormonal issues, and what does it look like? Well, if you look at it on a chart, can you imagine like an upside down nose? You know how our nose has like this little separation in the middle? That's like a deviation. So if you imagine a nose without the separation, that's what a normal vajayjay looks like, upside down. Like here's like the opening at the bottom, and here's like, you know, the rest of your body, but it has no separation. Now, my vaginas is kind of like the nose the way it is. It's kind of like this big chamber. Here's where the bottom is, here's where, you know, the rest of the body is, and it has this deviation down the middle. And then there's 2 cervixes and then 2 uteruses kind of glued together on top. So what can I say? I'm twice the woman. I saw that on Dr. Oz. I was like, sister, you know better than anyone else. I got you, girl. What does it mean to have one kidney? It definitely means I'm a little bit of trouble. Like, thank God I never was a sports player. I did like water skiing and stuff, but I was always an individual sports player, and I was never like a team sport player, and except for like volleyball. So thank goodness for that, because I could have killed myself many times. The kidney's kind of grown on the other kidney, so it is enlarged. What's over here, I don't know if it's just like empty space. We have the ureter ducts that filter the urine and the pee. They just attach to nothing, so yeah, that is how I found out that I have 2 vajayjays, and a little bit about my 2 vajayjays. One of my friends and I decided to actually give them names, and I think she named one of them Steve, but I didn't like that name. And I was like, I don't really know if I want to name my vajayjays, because that's like personal. And C-section, maybe, if it doesn't work. I probably will need in vitro. We don't really know because I've never really tried to have kids. But let me know what your questions are and I will try to answer them. But yeah, that is how I found out that I had 2 vaginas. It was all because of a duck. Please, dear Lord, bless that ducky, make him rest in peace, or her. I don't know. It was a California Maverick. Absolutely beautiful. But yeah, I've lived with that way. I mean, at that time I found out 19, 20 years I'd lived that way and it wasn't a problem, so hopefully it won't be in the future. Thank goodness I, you know, didn't play sports in middle school. But I love you guys. I hope that this video was informative to you. Sorry it took me so long to talk about. It is definitely interesting subject matter. But I love you guys, and I cannot wait to read your comments and tweets about your questions and address those in another video. So, love you, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Love you guys. Bye. My 2 vaginas love you too. Steve, if that's even what I'm going to name my vagina. Give me a name for my vagina. Don't call me weird. Okay, bye.